throughout the afternoon, and we were talking about our day of giving there at the beginning. Now we are going to be covering something going on here with Dan Rayfield. So, an Oregon State Attorney General spoke to the Supreme Court earlier today about the tariffs. This is on behalf of a multi-state lawsuit going on whether or not the tariffs are legal that the Trump administration has instituted. And we've got a little bit of his speech here from outside of the courthouse from earlier today. We're going to run that for you, but then we're expecting to hear from Dan Rayfield also here momentarily. We believe that there's going to be an online press conference that's going to be happening, so we'll bring you that as soon as we do. But just to catch you up to speed a little bit, here's what he said earlier today on those steps.
Yeah, and I can't speak to how prior AGs have applied. The major question is because people have been on both sides of this fence throughout the way. But what we talk about is what is the current structure of our case law here in America today. That is what needs to be applied to the rules that are going on right now. And the truth of the matter is, you heard them today talk about that $4 trillion of tariff revenue. If you use even 25%, that's lower than the math that they told the justice. That's a $1 trillion hidden tax on the American people. $1 trillion. And there wasn't a single vote taken in that building over there. And that's what the Constitution requires when you're raising revenue in this country. And right now, if you allow this, the president to continue to do this, you can raise taxes on anything, hidden taxes left and right on any good, any amount, for any duration, and all of us are going to pay the cost. That's why this is so important. And kind of getting back to the question, if we were to lose this case, it's an important conversation for the American people to say, is this what we really want in our country? And it allows Congress to have information to cabin the authority of the president if we are, because this is an American conversation because we're all paying for it as Americans.
Thank you all so much.
All right, so that was, again, sorry, taking a look there at my monitor, Oregon State Attorney General Dan Rayfield there talking about that. And as I mentioned, we expect to hear a little bit more here coming up regarding that multi-state lawsuit. We'll keep an eye on that when that does take place. Let's do this. Let's take another live look here at our Shriners camera, because I just pulled it up a few minutes ago, and it looks like some more clouds have already made their way in through there. So a little bit, getting a little bit more cloudy. I will go ahead and do this here for you. So we've got up-to-date weather forecast. Let me get this poll up here for you. We are live. Did I mention that, anybody? Okay, let's go ahead and we'll take a look at this. So there's looking at our forecast here for today and going out through the rest of the week. So you can see this is at kptv.com. You can certainly find out a lot more information as well on what to expect here for today leading up through this week. And then Veterans Day is next weekend on Tuesday. So next week. So there we go. All right, let's go ahead and go back to take a look here if our meeting has started. It has not. So here's what we're going to do. We'll catch you up on a little bit more of what's happened from earlier today. Let's go ahead and pull up one of our segments from earlier. We'll go ahead and let's go with, I'm just going to let our producer know, we'll go with that update right there. So if we can restart that, we'll get you some updates on some other stories that we're covering. So again, we're live here, in case you didn't know. This is part of what happens with this while we're waiting these press conferences or news conferences, different things like that. We are at the mercy of when they start. So sometimes they say 1:15, and sometimes that's not when it starts. So we'll go to this, we'll come back, we'll break back in once we have that. Thanks for joining us. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.
They are not welcome in our neighborhood.
Something needs to be done.
Reports of arrests by ICE agents are growing, and many in the city of Hillsborough are especially concerned.
Fox 12's Deborah Gill is live this morning to show us how they gathered to ask city leaders to take a stand. Deb.
Yeah, the city held a meeting last night to get community input on the impact of increased ICE activity in Hillsborough. The meeting was packed, the council hearing more than 3 hours of public comment. Fox 12 has reported on several arrests and confrontations involving ICE in Hillsborough in just the last 3 weeks. Business owners say it's affecting them as well as families and friends. And more than 50 businesses are talking about the impact with Washington County Chamber of Commerce.
They don't want to close their business. A lot of them are even sleeping in their businesses because of fear of leaving.
Please, any of these communities that have been in your life that have impacted you in one way or another, had your back at some point, please do the same and have their back.
The council tried to make it clear that even though Hillsborough is a sanctuary city, it has limited authority and cannot provide protection. And the city councilors said they wanted to hear from everyone, and they are now weighing their options on how the city can, or if they can, respond to the increased ICE activity there. Reporting live, Deborah Gill, Good Day, Oregon.
Well, there were no big races in Oregon and Washington this year. Around the country, it was a solid election night for Democrats across the board, notching wins in a number of off-year contests.
Both parties are now trying to learn some lessons as they look ahead to next year's midterms. For Fox 12, Doug Luzader has more.
Republicans are licking their wounds this morning. Democrats are savoring some wins, but also questioning the direction of the party.
My friends, we have toppled a political dynasty.
Democratic socialist Zohran Mamdani with a big win in New York's mayoral race as he promised to deliver on a seismic shakeup for the city and beyond.
So Donald Trump, since I know you're watching, I have 4 words for you. Turn the volume up.
And the president may have been watching. He posted this message on Truth Social late last night. Trump wasn't on the ballot and shutdown were the 2 reasons that Republicans lost elections tonight, according to pollsters, he wrote.
Man, with this vote, you guys just scream from the rooftops.
The Democratic wins kept stacking up in New Jersey, where Mikey Sherrill won a tight race for governor, and in Virginia, where another Democrat, Abigail Spanberger, also picked up a gubernatorial win. That's a state where a concentration of federal workers angry over the shutdown may have helped widen the margin.
I will not stand by silently while you attack Virginia's workers.
And Spanberger won as a moderate Democrat, a world away from Mamdani's socialist message in New York, with questions looming over the direction of the party. In California, meantime, Prop 50, which redraws the state's congressional districts along partisan lines, easily passed. It could cost Republicans 5 seats next year, and it's a big win for Governor Gavin Newsom.
And tonight, after poking the bear, this bear roared with an unprecedented turnout in a special election with an extraordinary result.
And that is just the latest move in the redistricting arms race for both parties that could have a huge impact in next year's midterm elections. In Washington, Doug Luzader, Fox News.
Happening today, Oregon lawyers will make arguments in the Supreme Court case over President Trump's sweeping tariff policy. Oral arguments will begin this morning at 7 o'clock. Oregon, along with 11 other states, sued the administration over the president's signature policy, saying the tariffs exceed the president's authority. The case will consider whether the president had the legal authority to impose tariffs by using a law known as the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. That law gives the president the ability to set tariffs in a national emergency. The president used that authority to impose tariffs as high as 50% on India and Brazil and 145% on China earlier this year. American businesses have paid nearly $90 billion to cover the tariffs being challenged. Breaking news right now, attorneys general, including Oregon's own Dan Rayfield, are speaking right now following oral arguments in the tariff lawsuit against the Trump administration at the Supreme Court. They apparently just finished a press conference, but we have been monitoring this in the Fox 12 newsroom, and we will bring that to you coming up in just a few minutes here on Good Day, Oregon. As of this morning, the government shutdown has officially set a record. Today marks the 36th day of the federal shutdown that officially makes it the longest in history. There is a glimmer of hope, though, that it could end soon. A small group of lawmakers say they have momentum on a plan to end the standoff. Now, it wouldn't give Democrats the extension of subsidies under the Affordable Care Act that they're holding out for, but it would give them a standalone vote on the matter. That could be a tough sell for some, though, because there's no guarantee that the standalone vote would pass.
All right, we're going to go ahead and bring you into this now, breaking news. I'm going to pull this up. So you were taking a look at Attorney General Dan Rayfield, who is going to be, I believe, speaking about...
AG Rayfield going to give a few brief remarks about today's hearing, and then we are going to open it up for questions. And when we do that, if you could use the hand raise function, and I will call reporters based on the order that we see those hands raised, and we will take about 25 minutes for that, and we kind of have a hard out time for that as well. So I'll wrap that when it gets close to that time. So with that, I'll turn it over to AG Rayfield.
Well, thank you, everyone, for joining today. The Oregon Department of Justice was in Washington, D.C. this morning to argue the tariffs case on behalf of all of the states here at the United States Supreme Court. Incredibly informative hearing went on this morning. I thought some of the most interesting things were coming from our own lawyers, but were in fact coming from the lawyers for President Donald Trump. Some very insightful things about how these tariffs are impacting Oregonians, frankly, impacting Americans. One of the things you heard is that $4 trillion is the amount of money that's expected to be raised. As President Trump talking about these things, they talked even from their own words that about 30 to 80% by their own calculations are going to be paid by Americans. What we are calling effectively a hidden tax on all Americans as we're moving forward. These were things that were said to the court, and the court was grappling with the reality. Did this president abuse an emergency power to be able to do this? Normally, when you pass revenue-raising things that are going to impact all of us, which we're seeing right now, whether it's clothes, utilities, healthcare costs, when you do things like that in America, you do that through votes. You do that in Congress. And this was one of the most important, things that the court was grappling with this morning. And so we expect and hope to have a ruling here in the near future because the impacts of these tariffs are being felt every time we walk into a store here in Oregon, or you're a small business paying bills. And so with that, I'm happy to answer questions for folks about how the hearing went and Oregon's involvement today.
Okay, so let's see here. I see one hand raised by Matthew Kish. Matthew?
Thanks for taking my question. You said near future on the ruling. What else could you say about that? When do you expect there might be a ruling?
It's tough to know exactly when. What we did see is that the Supreme Court expedited this hearing in a way that many other hearings are not expedited, the oral argument that is. And what you would expect potentially to see is, that this could last. You'll see a lot of things that can move into, next calendar year. However, these are things that are going on right now, impacting people right now. So I would expect something to happen sooner than the normal schedule, just based upon past actions. There's no way to predict that. One of the interesting things that you saw today was people grappling with these powers, and a lot of folks were coming to interesting conclusions. So all of them could agree that the president doesn't have these powers, but they may want to look at the different legal mechanisms on why he doesn't have those powers. For instance, the term regulate doesn't encompass taxation, or that we get more weedy into kind of non-delegation doctrine issues. So again, the short answer to your question is we would expect something sooner than the normal time frame, and obviously people would like to have that certainty sooner than later as well.
Thank you.
Okay, up next I see Tim Gordon with KGW. Tim, are you there?
I am now. You got me? Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Hey, so Dan, you were in there. What did you get a sense from the justices? What they're thinking, how they may be leaning, particularly some of the more conservative justices on the bench?
Yeah, I mean, you could really palpably sense the gravity of some of these issues that they were considering. Neil Gorsuch had some really moving questions for Trump's attorneys, talking about whether these are at odds with foundational principles here in America. You heard Chief Justice Roberts talk about Trump administration, what effectively saying is you can tax anything at any height for any length, for any reason. And that's an immense amount of power that has been, if you would take the Trump administration at their word in a way that no other presidential administration has, it's just an immense amount of power. And they were really grappling with that. So I think you had every justice seriously considering whether the Trump administration has the authority to do this. If I were sitting in the shoes of either the Trump administration or the states holding the line, I'd rather be sitting in our shoes right now, or based upon the way that the questioning happened. When they get back in chambers and they're talking about these things and how they see the world, it'll be interesting to see how that unfolds. But I think it was very clear, I think for all Oregonians, for all Americans to know, is that whether it was a conservative justice or a left-leaning justice, that people were actively considering not just the importance of the ruling in this case at hand, but the hallmark and kind of the pillars of our democracy in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, Anastasia with the Statesman Journal.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I was just wondering if, because Oregon and the states had a little less time to argue than some of the other parties today, just kind of by the nature of going last, was there anything that you think you would have liked to see further emphasized, or any points that you think maybe should have been brought up a little more?
No, and actually it may not appear that just watching from the outside. Each party had equal amounts of time, depending on how the justices asked questions that may extend time from here to there. There was a ton of briefing that went on above and beyond what you heard and listened to this morning. And we got to all the arguments that we thought were important for the justices to consider.
All right, I don't see any more hands. Matthew Kish with the Oregonian.
Sarah, I just wanted to follow up on the earlier question about kind of your view on the justices. I think the Associated Press kind of characterized them as skeptical about the Trump administration's arguments. Would you agree with that?
What I would say is that the questions that the justices were asking really go at the heart of whether the Trump administration has the authority to set tariffs. And again, I think the facts really speak for themselves. And I think this was compelling for the justices, where no other president had ever used this power to try and implement tariffs. Every other president had used the appropriate statutes that Congress intended. I think that weighed heavily. There were some, what I would say, conservative philosophical doctrines, whether that's the major questions doctrine or the non-delegation doctrine. Those are things that you don't hear discussed as much. Those were being dove into pretty heavily today by the conservative justices. So I think it was I can see why, the media outlets may say that folks were skeptical, but to be able to get to a decision in this case, you really have to grapple with some of these really important doctrines.
Thank you.
All right. Does anyone else have questions? I don't see any more hands raised. Oh, there we go. Anastasia again with the Statesman Journal.
Yeah, should the Supreme Court decide that there should be some sort of refund, can you offer any sort of insight into how that might work out?
Yeah, and the philosophy behind this is exactly what we teach our kids. If you make it wrong, you make it right. And if you screw up, you need to fix it, right? And you've had businesses or individuals paying additional money for unlawful tariffs. And most likely what happened is you had a Trump administration. They got advice from his lawyers saying, hey, this probably isn't legal. You shouldn't do that. But you go for it anyway, and it harms people, you got to fix that harm. How they do that is going to be an administrative function, and there's probably a bunch of different ways that they could do that efficiently, but I would trust the Trump administration to get together to make sure that whether it's a small business or an individual who's paid tariffs, that they're reimbursed for that.
Okay, Tim Gordon with KGW.
Just that kind of nuts and bolts thing. I understand that you don't know when they'll actually rule, but are the arguments over? This was the day, and now they've got it, and they'll take it from here. Is that right?
Yeah. Excuse me. Effectively, all the briefings have been submitted. These were the final arguments, and now it's up to the justices to make their final ruling.
Okay. Well, I guess before you go, what do you want Oregonians to know most about this in terms of where it stands right now and what you're trying to accomplish here?
You have amazing attorneys and staff at the Oregon Department of Justice that are working overtime to make sure that we're representing all Oregonians, all businesses within Oregon. You have a Trump administration that has passed tariffs, which are a hidden tax on all of us. And we are in court making sure that we're having this conversation, having a conversation with the American people to talk about these increases that all of us are experiencing day in and day out now. We're seeing it with utility costs. We're seeing it with food. We're seeing it with health care. These are things that we are paying for. And this wasn't done in the way. When you raise revenue in our country, you do it in public. You do it in Congress. You do it with representatives that were elected by us. We don't allow one human being in the Oval Office to unilaterally start increasing all of our taxes and taking money out of our pockets and increasing the prices of the things that we pay. That's what this case is about, and that is why we're fighting so hard, because we're currently in an incredible affordability crisis here in America, and we need to be taking very different steps economically than increasing the prices for everyday goods.
Great, thanks for that. You should have some water. You deserve it.
I was just going to say, if anyone else has questions, maybe AG Rayfield can get a sip of water. I don't see any more hands up. Does anyone else have any other questions?
It's the compassion. They want me to drink water.
Yes.
You managed it well. You were fine, but thanks again.
Going once, going twice. Okay. Any closing thoughts? Attorney General.
Just appreciate everybody being on there. If you have additional follow-up questions, we're happy to answer them.
Yeah. Okay. And you guys know where to find me. So we will let the AG get going with his day because he's out of pack day and that continues. So thanks, guys.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you. Thanks, Jenny.
All right. So there we go. Hearing from Attorney General Dan Rayfield from the state of Oregon about those lawsuits about the testimony regarding the tariffs going on there. We've got more information at kptv.com, and we'll follow up with this as well if there's any more information that does come out here regarding that, as we do here throughout the day for Fox 12. Now, we are live streaming here out of the Fox 12 Oregon newsroom, so we can hop in and out of those things. As I mentioned, sometimes they start on time, sometimes they don't, but we're here to bring those to you, and we've got lots more to talk about. We're going to take another quick break. We'll reset. We're going to be talking to Spencer Schott out there in Tillamook. So we're going to talk a little bit more about our day of giving, and we've got plenty more news to catch up with as well, in addition to some interviews coming on later on today. So we're here with you. Thanks for joining us. We'll take a quick break, and we'll talk here in just a few minutes. I'm Greg Nibbler. This is Fox 12 Now.